This is the GroWTF podcast, a growth podcast of HOG Klaus-M. Hi, my name is Klaus-M, and I'm co-founder and head of growth of UserSnap. In the GroWTF podcast, I want to share with you the successes, but more the failures and learnings from growing our B2B SaaS company as a co-founder and as a head of growth. In the last years, I was and I am still confronted with all kinds of challenges from growing our product, company, and our team. Also, I want to become a successful head of growth since I joined a growth agency some years ago. And this podcast should be the platform to share my experiences about what worked and what not. So, what is this company I'm working in? UserSnap is a feedback platform that helps businesses to build better, more successful products and services with user feedback. A bit about myself. I'm a serial entrepreneur, and in the last 20 plus years, I co founded 3 companies within the tech marketing industry. 2 of them got acquired, one by Atlassian. Let's start with today's podcast. But before that, don't forget to subscribe on iTunes for this podcast or sign up on GroWTF, so it's GROWTF.com to stay connected. This will bring you 7 years of good luck. Today's episode is about how to plan the growth of your B2B SaaS company. As always, this is not a playbook of how to do it. It's more about my experiences, what I learned from setting up the growth process for UserSnap. Yeah, so how should we grow our B2B company? This is, I think, the main question everyone asks him or herself when you're working for a startup or any other company. And is there a process I can use? Is there any framework? And when I joined UserSnap several years ago, a lot of things seemed right and they seemed like being already set up in the right way and working. So there's customers were kind of defined, the growth channels, the content marketing was a big big channel for incoming leads. The blog has an amazing number of visitors. So the product had kind of a product market fit, but operated in a niche. It was visual or still are very popular in visual feedback, but and also there were several hundreds of customers, including Microsoft, Airbus, Canva. So a lot of things seemed right. And we had a kind of a decent growth back then. But of course, the expectations also when I jumped on board was that we can turn that into a hockey stick. So I started looking into several growth analytics in several numbers, looking into Google Analytics. And we did a lot of customer interviews to hear firsthand like how they are using UserSnap, are they happy and so on and so forth. And when I did that and I looked into several, let's say, draws of UserSnap, a lot of things became less clear to me than it were before. Besides one person, I was the only one working on the growth of the company in terms of marketing and sales. So So I started the growth process back then, and looking back, I have to say it was a bit too fast. So I jumped too fast into action. I should have spent a lot more time into analyzing and getting like a lot of things clear or making them clear before I start. So which is a clear perspective on where we are positioned, what the personas are, what are the needs of these personas. But I spent some time in a growth agency and I learned some growth frameworks there. And so I started using that. So what we did, and as I said, we were only 2 back then in the growth team. We came up with a backlog. So we collected a lot of ideas along the R funnel, so along the customer journey. we collected some ideas, we prioritized them, and then we started doing a lot of things, from paid acquisition to more of the content marketing, trying to leverage the blog even more, doing more social media, and so on and so forth. But it was this was like more in doing a lot of things, but less about a planned process, which which hooks up on the ends where you see the best, like where you can leverage the most on it. Yeah. So we worked, we did a lot of activities, but I think they were not it was not outcome driven. Yeah. So yeah, we were kind of running in the rat race, but in the wheel, in the mouse wheel, but we were not coming forward. When I looked, so I stopped doing that back then, and then I looked into or tried to analyze what is going wrong here. Can we do a restart? So first of all, there were several problems. One was there were hundreds of topics I had the feeling we have to focus on. It was hard to pinpoint what we should focus on. The team was too small. There were unclear growth goals. Hockey stick is nice, but you have to focus. You have to start somewhere. You have to focus. Also, the metrics and KPIs to follow were unclear. Our teams were not cross-functional, which means that I can recall back then that even the development product team was in the other room, so they built something new, and then when it was finished, it was like kicked over the fence to the marketing team, and then we should promote it. And so this was not the way how we saw agile teams working and cross-functional teams, and especially also aligned teams on a goal. Yeah, and it was not only working about growth, getting more customers and leads on board. It was also like about marketing, brand, sales, setting up all of that. There was kind of an urge for growing, but there were things on the foundation not set, which is like positioning. Where are we standing? Where do we want to head? How do we see us in comparison to competitors? What are the needs of our personas? What personas do we address? And what is our market? So with these several problems ahead of me, I started focusing on like restarting a process and being clear on where we want to head. So we set the objective to set up a growth planning process. Yeah, based on these experiences, I set up 3 main topics, or like, so in the to this approach, yeah, it consisted of 3 main topics I wanted to focus on. So the first one was to hire the right and hopefully senior people, because with 2 people, it is, of course you can do it, but then I think you don't need this huge planning process. You don't need this alignment. You can scale that down, but you can only just get 1 or 2 things at a time with 2 people. So I wanted to grow the team first of all and hire specific persons. So it was from for sales and a growth hacker and a digital marketeer, specifically people who are familiar with the US market. And you can listen to the podcast episode 2 to get more insights on hiring the right people. So hiring was my first plan, and I focused more than 6 months only on this topic, or most of the time I focused on this topic. The second was I wanted to have a goal-based growth process. This seems very obvious, but it was unclear. Our goal setting was like basically pretty young. So we started with the OKR framework, and I will do a podcast episode about that soon. So we had the goal, the OKR process, but it was still not easy going, I would say. So I wanted to align our growth process on that, because if the company focuses on the OKRs, then the growth has also to focus on the OKRs. It cannot go on the sideways, you know. And I wanted to analyze what is working and double down on that first of all, because this is always the easiest one. If something is already working, try to scale it. Last but not least, and this has of course a lot also to do with our approach, and you know that our company is about user feedback, so research and user research is kind of a important topic. So for all the outstanding, or for the upcoming and to be done steps, which is about, let's say, how do we set up our brand, what brand values do we have, the positioning, where do we position our company, and also like other marketing focused topics. We wanted to set them up in a research base. So we don't want to just set up our positioning and we want to do the necessary research based on that. And also the personas. I think this is an important part. We wanted to do in-depth research on the personas and understanding their needs, and not just doing, you know, experienced and gut feeling based definitions here. So yeah, we restarted the growth planning process, and the first and foremost, let's say, goal there was to follow our goal, to follow the 2 years goal and take that as a North Star metric. So it's our 2 years goal is around, let's say, customers and certain revenue. Plus we have a team specific KPI based on quality leads. So this is kind of the North Star. And then from the OKR process, I hope you're familiar with that. The company objectives are our guidance. So they help us to focus and to narrow down where we are concentrating our growth efforts for the planning. And we call it quarterly OKR ceremony, we're defining new key results for these objectives, so which are like measurable deliverables for these objectives. And the important thing here is that this works together across all teams. Yeah, so we are working here together on the key results, and the key results are our focus and our focus also for the growth project. Of course, we are still doing like kind of research and analysis into our metrics and seeing like you know, do we have any gaps which could be sweet spots where we for growth initiatives, or are there any like any parts where we have a massive growth or massive change where we could focus on and maybe double down on that. So this is kind of, you know, we are having the objectives and key results as a funnel. Like this is helping us to narrow down our efforts. Where do we focus on? And then we do the research and analysis just to see that we are not missing out on anything. It's also along the R funnel. So sometimes, you know, you have to do something in awareness and acquisition and activation. But this helps us to come up with growth initiatives, and they have to fit into the key results, into the company objectives, and also working long term toward our 2-year goal. This is how we quarterly come up with the initiatives. So yeah, as I said, we're doing an analysis on the behavior, on the journey of like what are the visitors and leads doing on our web assets and in our product. analyzing what gaps do we find and what massive changes. So maybe we find some sweet spots we can work on. And then based on the key results from the OKRs and the sweet spots, we build like a backlog, a list of growth initiatives. And then we still use the approach I already described a bit. So we have this backlog of different growth initiatives and probably have way too many. So you have to prioritize them somehow. So this will do we are doing that right now by the ICE score. So the ICE means impact, confidence, and ease. So how easy it is to do it, how confident are you that you're getting the results you want, and how big is the impact on the company. Of course, the limits on resources and budgets are also a factor which we have to take into account. And based on that, we can prioritize and list and rank our growth initiatives again. The good thing is, as they are based on the OKRs, we can also bring in some initiatives which are not directly contributing to growth immediately, but you need them as a long term, especially if you're working on a product company, which is like, how can you work on the brand, on your positioning, on research topics. So with that approach, we can bring these activities also into our planning. Yeah. Yeah, following this growth planning approach, we have at the end of this quarterly, we have a list of growth initiatives which are ranked, which are agreed across teams. That's very important. So not only the growth team is working on that, but everyone everyone in the company kind of agreed and is aware of what we're doing, why we're doing it, or what we want to do. And it also follows our main company goals and KPIs. I think with that, we have a very good feeling of how we are moving on. We also see that the teams are working together on certain initiatives and are aligned on that. And that's helping us to identify growth levers across the whole company. Yeah, not only in the growth section, also in product, also in customer success. And when you're also working for a SaaS company, you probably know the topic where when the product team meets the growth team within the product, that it's not always so clear who does what. For example, to activate people in your trials in your product. So I think this is something we tackled quite nicely with this approach. As I mentioned before, there was also, we wanted to focus on what worked so far. I want to go a bit into that. So in the beginning, we also analyzed what worked because I don't want to change everything. What is working, never touches running system. So what is working, try to scale it. Yeah. And for us, especially 3 things worked quite fine. As I said, the content marketing with the blog and organic traffic. So we're our SEO and content marketing works pretty well. Second part was word of mouth. A lot of people recommended UserSnap and are recommending UserSnap because they love the product, which is super nice, hard to scale. And last but not least, the referrals. So with these 3 topics in mind, we started some initiatives. I will quickly go into them. So for content marketing and organic traffic, we build a content lead engine. So how to get more leads and product trials out of your content. And if you want to hear more about that, then listen to my podcast number 1, which is about the content lead engine. The second is word of mouth, which is, as I said, hard to scale. We started building a feedback tribe, which is a community to get people to talk more about their success stories around feedback and to interact and to also connect Usersnap with this positive feeling, and yeah, to get recommended more. And last but not least, the referrals. Yeah, this is something where we started becoming thought leaders. We're sharing a lot of valuable content through PR and guest posting. Also something we restarted, we tried that before, but now we have a very, I think, very structured approach to that, and slowly it's taking off. This is a long-term process. It takes quite a while until you have set out all the articles, but I think this will be also a good topic for another episode of this podcast. I want to quickly mention this book from Weinberg and Mars about, which is called Traction, because if you're like in the beginning of your growth planning process, it's helpful to see and know about the different traction channels. The authors are talking about 19 traction channels, and this always helped me to find, also to dive into new ideas. I can only recommend you to read it. It's super helpful to learn more about the different traction channels, but also what some kind of ideas, what is working for the B2B and what not. So I think this is a good read for you, or at least it was for me. So a short summary. After we restarted our growth planning process, we took the 2-year goal and the KPIs there as our North Star metric. We're using the OKR planning, the objectives, and especially the quarterly set key results as our funnel and focus to narrow down where we are starting growth initiatives. And we're still doing a lot of analysis and research to find sweet spots where we can focus on. And if we take that together, it gives you a pretty good alignment on the teams. So you can set cross-functional goals to reach certain objectives. You can also include marketing goals from branding, positioning into that. So, and still have a growth planning process. Especially if you're a smaller team, it is not so easy, to have specific people working on these topics, and you have to bring that into your overall approach. Everything takes some time. So it took me also quite some time to set up this process, because every team constellation and in every team setup is different. Yeah. So even if you do the same as I'm suggesting here, it might take some time until it is working for you. It will be probably a bit different. Measuring the success is hard, especially if the attribution is not finished. Every successful growth planning has, first of all, you need the goals, but after that, these have to be measured. And the measuring, we have an overall measuring on the company, on the product, is quite nice and working well. But especially figuring out single initiatives and how they contributed to the overall success is super hard. And currently we're working on getting the attribution right, which means that we can better figure out which growth initiative contributed to the overall goals. But last but not least, a growth planning process is, for me, I think it's essential to move in the same direction. What I mean is that the whole company, all teams are aligned and working together on certain campaigns. And this is for me one of the success factors, one of the important ones. Yeah, on the GroWTF website, which is GroWTF.com, you will find some resources and links I used to come up with this approach. So have a look at the website. And if you are currently working on your own growth planning, I would be super interested to hear more about your approach. So just reach out to me, talk to me. I would be happy to learn more about other ways of how to tackle this problem. Last but not least, thanks a lot for listening. I hope you subscribe to the GroWTF podcast on iTunes or directly on the website to stay up to date. Thanks a lot and have a wonderful day. Bye.